housekeeping business. So I just want to take a minute to say how much I appreciate Sheriff Gahler being here today, speaking to our group, is I feel like there are really many opportunities for us to work together on a lot of common goals we might have. I very much appreciate the willingness of two of your offices to participate in our upcoming forum on disrupting school-to-prison pipeline. I didn't even mention that one yet. That's May. It is on the calendar, so put it on your calendar. That's going to be really fascinating. We've got some really great speakers, including two of the officers from Harford County, who are one who's an SRO and the other is the supervisor. Also, opioids continue to be a problem in our county and something that I think we're all concerned and worried about. And I'm just going to circle back, we're talking about budgetary issues, and I think that this is another opportunity for, those of us who've been advocating for educational matters to recognize that in this moment, that in this process, parents, Harford County Public Schools, Sheriff's Department, that I think it's really important that we all stay positive, that it does not become an opportunity for kind of, infighting, that everybody's got an important goal and a purpose here in the county, and I think we all appreciate the fact that an educated youth, an educated population is better for anybody, helps reduce crime. And so that's why I think we have some good things that we can pull together to try to make Harford County a better place. So I'll just give you a little bit of information about our sheriff. He was first elected in 2014. The Harford County Sheriff's Office is responsible for providing law enforcement, correctional services, and court services for Harford County's 255,000 residents. Sheriff Gahler leads a workforce of more than 600 sworn and civilian personnel and oversees an annual budget of more than $84 million. He also teaches in the Public Safety Leadership Program at Johns Hopkins University and is a founding operating partner in the Advanced Leadership Consortium, a company focused on providing quality training and consulting services to public safety organizations and private businesses. He's a veteran law enforcement officer, having previously served 28 years with the Maryland State Police. He's a 42-year resident of Harford County. He resides in the Forest Hill area of the county with his wife and their 2 daughters. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I did bring an outline just so I can stay on track, but if I wander away from the microphone, if you can't hear me, if I wander away, yell at me, or if we're doing on camera, maybe I have to stay here.
You can do it any way you want.
All right.
Do what you want, Jeff.
Just a little fix up on my bio. I guess I have to update it. We no longer, there's a law in the books for the Sheriff of Harford County that you cannot have any outside employment outside of teaching. So actually, funny enough, Colonel Davis and I, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, we were co-teaching a class at Johns Hopkins, and we started this company back in 2012. But once I was elected sheriff, I could no longer participate in that. We had to close the doors down on that, which I do think is a shame in some standpoints. I don't have the time for it, but I do think it's a shame because it was the goal to make our public safety professionals, particularly police officers, better, more professional, more educated at the job, to do any job they have to do. Through my first term, my chief deputy was Colonel Steve Bodaway. I think I know a lot of people in the room are familiar with Steve. He's been a long-time member of the Harford County Sheriff's Office. When I came in as sheriff in 2014, I brought Bill in with me. Bill was a retired major from the Baltimore Police Department, was working at Catonsville Community College, Baltimore County Community Colleges, and I hired him as one of my majors here. With the retirement of Colonel Bodaway earlier this year in January, I promoted Bill to the rank of colonel, so I want everyone to meet our new chief deputy. And as you also heard in that introduction, behind the school system, we are your largest expense as taxpayers here in Harford County. The Harford County Sheriff's Office had a budget of just over $84 million, is far behind the school, but the second most expensive things that our community is asked to pay for. I will say, I think, on a value basis, crime numbers are down. Each of the first 4 years of my term, 5% last year from what the Harford County Sheriff's Office has seen year to year in uniform crime reporting numbers. And what uniform crime reporting numbers are, for anyone not familiar, are categories that are required to be reported to the FBI. So they're your most serious things: murder, rape, robbery, arson, thefts, burglary, I'm missing one. But the most serious crimes. Every month we have to report those to the FBI. We report them to state police compiles it, reports the state data to the FBI, and that's part of the uniform crime reporting system. So I'm very pleased to have seen crime continue to decline during my first term, and that in the face of the heroin epidemic, the opioid epidemic, that every community is suffering from across this country. I think it's particularly complimentary of the men and women of the Sheriff's Office, our task force, our allied partners, the 3 municipal agencies here, and our state and federal partners at all ends in helping to lead to those decreasing numbers. On the opioid epidemic, I get a lot of questions about why is it so bad in Harford County. It's bad everywhere, and our numbers are certainly not as bad as it is other places in our state and other places around the country, but it is certainly worse than some other places. There's several reasons for that. We have 2 major source cities. We have Baltimore, which is where the majority of our fentanyl, our synthetic, come from, and we have the I-95 corridor that traverses right through the middle of our county. If you go and talk to the Cecil County Sheriff, he'll tell you Philadelphia and Wilmington are their source cities on that side of the dam. So that's just how the drug trade works. All of the illegal heroin, be it heroin or be it the synthetics, fentanyl, carfentanil, are coming in from overseas. It's coming from South America, or it's coming in through the mail system, through our own government systems, through the mail system being shipped in from China and India, and goes out to source cities where it's dealt and then distributed to our citizens. We have taken a very aggressive approach. When I first came into office, we have a task force here in this county comprised of mostly, I think it's 17 Sheriff's Office deputies, including the command person who's holds a captain's rank, 1 officer from each of the local police departments, Bel Air, Aberdeen, Haverty Grace, 1 from the Maryland State Police, 1 from the DEA, and prosecutor from the state's attorney's office. That is who works all these overdoses investigations. When we came into office, one of the things we did was began sending a drug investigator out to every overdose scene. And we have a lot of them. You see the signs. We are currently at 41 already this year, 11 fatal and 30 non-fatals just in this short period, which are good numbers because we're running down about 45% in both categories, non-fatal and fatals, so far this year compared to this point last year. But that's still 11 lives lost. That's a lot of lives lost. We began sending drug investigators out to the scene. Everyone familiar with the Good Samaritan Act, which says we can't charge the person who overdoses or anyone who calls for help. In a large part, that originated here with our response. We were not charging, even before it was law, we were not charging the person who had overdosed. We were going out there with 2 goals: to try to identify and gather enough information so our investigators could track down the dealers. We've had many successful dealer cases doing that. The secondary goal was to try to steer that person toward treatment if they had survived their overdose, and give family members support information, treatment information. I can tell you some of the more notable cases. I think everyone's familiar with the Gun Trace Task Force in Baltimore City. What a lot of people are not familiar with is that was one of our heroin overdose cases where one of our deputies up on a wire listening to drug phone calls heard, and he recognized just off of the lingo that was being used that these are cops. And he took that to the federal partners who initiated the investigation. That case would not have started without, maybe they would have went down a different way, doing what they were doing. And I have no pity for them whatsoever. They're dealing heroin, same as any other dealer. So that case originated here. It happened in Baltimore City, but that case originated here off of a Harford County heroin overdose. And I believe it was a fatal at that initiated that investigation. We got a little criticism that we didn't care. We just wanted to arrest people. We didn't care, even though we were trying to steer the people toward treatment, which was not 100% the truth. But what we did off of that is we generated some help cards, so every police officer in the county, and then it became part of the Lieutenant Governor's 12-step action plan, carried a help card. And that was if the person survived, our officer was there, could put that person in touch who had overdosed with someone else who was a recovering addict. Because to talk to me, someone who has never touched heroin, I have no credibility in that world. I can't tell you how to get off of something so addictive if I have no idea what I'm talking about. So we tried to make those contacts, and that actually became a recommendation. And I could spend the whole, I'm supposed to go 15 to 20 minutes. I could spend an hour up here talking about what we've done on the opioid epidemic in so many ways, working with our county partners, working with the county executive, working with the health department. I just attended Joe Ryan's retirement the other night. For anyone who knows Joe Ryan, anytime I speak to him, he was our secret weapon in this battle. 19 years here in Harford County, following a 27-year career in the state police. Man gave a big chunk of his life trying to make our community better, and he's on to retirement, grandchildren, and good for him. And the fight goes on. And my Hope Group, coming into office, one of the big things we did was form the Hope Group, and that stands for Heroin Overdose Prevention Effort. And what that was is that's reaching out into the community and getting those family members who have lost children or brothers or sisters, parents, getting addicts themselves who are in recovery, getting members from the healthcare, getting people from the schools, getting people from every segment, including the government, including corrections, which I oversee, including law enforcement, and sitting down, and especially our faith-based community. Pastor McLaughlin being one of the big partners, who having lost his 17-year-old daughter to an overdose in 2014. So we meet routinely, still to this day, and many of the initiatives, such as the awareness signs that are outside of some of our buildings, the Hope House, if you haven't seen that, it's a mobile bedroom tour to show parents and guardians what potential signs of addiction or drug use might look like. So we take that around the county for people to see. There was a concept that we stole from Pennsylvania, where they would bring it into like a facility like this and set up in the corner of the room a little bedroom setting. We just put wheels under it so we can take it a lot more places. And so far, to their credit, we have taken it to 76 different events, up into PA, down as far as Ocean City, to Annapolis, up into Delaware. 2,600 people have toured that trailer since we began in July of 18. And without our volunteers for our Citizens Police Academy alumni and from our Hope Work Group, I wouldn't be able to do this. We put out a police officer with it from our community policing division anytime it goes. He or she drives the truck, tows the trailer, helps set it up. But our 3 volunteers come and they work. They take the people on the tours. I could not afford to take additional 3 police officers off of any shift to do that many different tours. So we live on the backs of our volunteers to be able to provide that awareness effort. Again, I can speak a lot about that. If people have specific questions on some of the efforts that we've made, we'll speak about it, but we do keep our numbers, and our numbers are not scientific by any stretch. It's when a police officer or EMS is dispatched to an overdose scene, we count that as an overdose. Now, it might come out later that the person passed away from alcohol abuse or something unrelated to opioid. That's very few and far between, but just off of our non-scientific numbers, since we started tracking in early 15, we've responded to 1,553 overdoses as of last Monday, and we've lost 259 people here in our county. So that is, that is a horrific number. If that was, I mean, our traffic accidents and homicides, thank goodness, don't even come to not a tenth of that. That is a horrific and tragic loss of life. Part of the Hope Group's effort is to look around, see what other people are doing, like the bedroom setting, the mock bedroom, the Hope House. Try to find some good, innovative ideas. And there's a whole bunch more. The Crisis Center that the county's in partnership with Upper Chesapeake, some legislative things that we've tried. So there's a lot of things being tried. If anyone in this country had the answer, we would have gone, stole it, and implemented it. It's just not out there. That's how powerful the addiction is that we're dealing with opioids. One of the other big things we've tackled, and it's ironic because I come here and speak at the Unitarian Church every year during domestic violence awareness, and it is the policy changes that we made coming into office related to domestic violence. And some of you have probably heard me speak about this before. Coming in and coming from a different organization, I was used to policies that were far more aggressive than we had here at the Sheriff's Office. We implemented a lot of those right away. We sat down with our friends at SARC, had them go over some of our initiatives. It was surprising to me coming into office that we were not writing reports on every domestic incident, and we weren't even writing reports on every domestic violence incident. That has changed. Every single time a law enforcement deputy, he or she goes out to a domestic violence report or a domestic scene, and the difference is the allegation of an unlawful touching. A domestic incident, someone calls the police because two spouses are fighting, or a brother and sister are fighting. That's a domestic too. There's a piece of paper now generated, a written report is now generated, so that we can see if there's a trend or a pattern or something that has to be dealt with. Totally, to me, it was a little running behind the times. We have caught with, again, working with our partners at SARC, we caught our policies up, not just one, we issued 3 new policies. Many of them had to do with things that required taking firearms, consistent with the law, required to take firearms out of the home while a domestic violence incident is being investigated. With that, we saw a spike in our uniform crime reporting numbers, and with that spike going up in aggravated assaults, because that's where it would fall under, it was something like 40% the first year. It's kind of leveled off. So with that and the heroin thing, the crime that comes along with the heroin, breaking into cars, we see a lot of that. Ladies with the purses at Panera, if you've seen our Facebook post, we post about that every few months. The Paneras are particularly bad, some of the other fast food restaurants, and the grocery stores. The ladies, and I don't carry a handbag, but ladies like to have their handbag and it's open on the purse, and you'll be shocked. We watch them on video, how fast they can get in there, get your wallet, and be gone, and be spending on your cards before you realize it. And so much of that is related to the opioid epidemic. So with all that, that's my long way around explaining. With the changes we've made, I am beyond pleased that we've been able to see a decline in overall crime. We announced last year an expansion of our school resource officer program in response to other things we're seeing around our country, of course. We now have ahead of schedule a school resource officer. We being Harford County Sheriff's Office, handle all the public schools outside of the municipal areas. We have a deputy now assigned to every high school and middle school in the county, and the towns have also covered all their high schools and middle schools. The city of Havre de Grace, I believe it's the city, has in all schools, even in the elementary schools, so they are a little bit ahead of the curve. We spent an extra $1.5 million. Not my wallet, trust me, my wife wouldn't let me leave with it if it was 1.5 in my wallet. That we spent $1.5 million. The county executive was able to identify in his budget. You talked a little bit ahead at the end of your meeting about the school budget, and what are they, 20 or 30 million short? Millions add up. So I was appreciative that the county executive was supportive enough to give us that $1.5 million. A lot of people ask me, why not the elementary schools? The elementary schools, to provide us one school resource officer to every elementary school, would have been 27 additional deputies. Our entire school policing right now is 17. We would need 27 more to cover the elementary schools, and that would be $4.5 million. It's not there. I've talked to the county executive about other plans. We're working with the school system. We're working with the new, I forget what they've named it, but at the state level, there's a department now in charge of school safety. We're working with them. They're supposed to be starting up a task force, which we will be aggressively participating in, and to look at how we provide as safe of an environment for the students in the elementary schools as is for the school resource officer. In large part, what that factor is, it's a deterrent factor. That a person who is planning to take on a target, be it a school or be it a church or something else, that they know that there is the potential that they will not be allowed to carry out, that they will be stopped before they're allowed to carry out whatever heinous act they have in mind. Couple other things I did want to touch on quickly, because I think I'm pushing on my 15 or 20 minutes, and I always love getting the questions, because I can think for hours and still not touch on. You might be sitting there thinking, I don't want him to talk about this, and I can miss it all together. So I do know that we have a desire to have questions and answers, and me and if the Colonel, if you have anything directly for the Colonel, are happy to. I do want to touch on, because I was in Annapolis testifying, I'll be in here again down here again this week on our 287G program. A lot of people are not, well, I say a lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people aren't fully versed on it. If you're fully versed and you don't like it, I understand that, but I do like to take a minute and explain what it is and what it is not. The 287G program is the program that we work in partnership with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. It was something that I committed to in 2010 running for this office, and I was not successful in 2010, and I committed to running in 2014. We work with our federal partners. We work with the FBI on issues related to public safety, terrorism. We work with the DEA on the heroin epidemic. We work with ATF on criminals using guns to further their criminal enterprise. We work with ICE on making our community safer. What 287G does is a federal partnership, and the 287G program began in 1995. It was President Clinton that signed it into law. It's continued through every presidential administration since. President Obama accepted his administration. I don't think it was him personally. I don't think he stayed in Harford County, but his administration approved our acceptance into the program in 2015, and we have been participating with an MOU since 2016. What this program is corrections-based purely. It has nothing to do with our law enforcement deputies on the street. There is a great difference between the men and women on the street and the men and women in the jail. The Maryland Police Training Commission, in order to be a police officer in the state of Maryland, our police academy is 28 weeks long, a little over 6 months, followed by 12 weeks of field training with a more experienced deputy on the road. It takes us about a year to get a law enforcement officer out onto the street. Corrections, there's not as many standards, requirements that they have to meet, so it's only a 10-week academy for them to meet all those requirements, get them to the facility. There's also a training period where they have to be sided with a correctional deputy of senior experience in order to be certified. The salaries are different. I cannot take a law enforcement deputy and have somebody call in sick at the jail and plop them in there. That is not allowed. They're not trained to that standard. I cannot take a correctional deputy and put him in a patrol car or put him in a traffic scene directing accidents. They are not interchangeable. Even though they both fall underneath the office of the sheriff, they are not interchangeable. 287G is strictly a corrections-based program in that if you are arrested in Harford County by the state police, by the Harford County Sheriff's Office, Aberdeen, Bel Air, Havre Grace, Natural Resources Police, Transportation Authority Police, you are brought to our interagency processing center at the detention center. During that screening process, we have always fingerprinted, photographed to see if anyone else has any warrants for your arrest. It could be another state, it could be another jurisdiction in Maryland, whether they want you for some purpose, have a paper out there. This is an extra screening step that tells us whether that person is in the country legally or at least foreign-born. Many of who come through are foreign-born or here illegally and no other actions taken. But if they're here illegally, that is reported to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. And if they decide, then they will begin filing a detainer and begin to file whatever proceedings, whether it be deportation or some other sanction. That takes place at Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. My interest in this program, going back to 2008, had to do with public safety purely.
I care about crime and care about stopping crime more specifically, keeping the crime on as low as possible. And I tell people all the time, nothing against my friends in Cecil County. I love my sheriff up there, Scott Adams, one of my fellow sheriffs. But if I could deport people back to Cecil County, that's going to help me keep Harford County safer. I'd be all for it. If I could deport people to Pennsylvania, I'd be all for it. If people come to our country and are looking to make a better lives for themselves and are otherwise abiding by the law, I have no issue with it whatsoever. That's immigration's issue. We're not out there, we're not out there doing immigration raids at all. Nothing with law enforcement. We're doing the screening process. That means if you're driving drunk, that being about the lowest thing to get you arrested, lowest violation to get you arrested and brought to the jail. Drunk drivers kill a whole lot of people every year, up to anything, and we've had it. Second degree or attempted homicide, I think, is our most serious charge. We've had 4 MS-13 members identified through the screening process. Those are the people that I do not feel as sheriff that it benefits public safety for us to just willingly open the door and allow them back into Harford County. So that is what it's not and what it is. So if you're evaluating the program, I just ask that it be evaluated on those facts. And not to end on a sour note, let's do something a little more fun. We have our Citizens Police Academy starting this week. Do we have any graduates from the Citizens Police Academy? Running for this job twice, 28 years in the state police beforehand, I thought I had a very good understanding coming into office of what would be expected of me. And I had people at the sheriff's office say, Jeff, you have no idea. They were right. I was wrong. There is so much expected and demanded of this office. And again, our deputies and our civilian staff do such a wonderful job. We offer a 10-week Citizens Police Academy, meets across the street at the college most nights. That starts this Wednesday. We still have spots if anyone's interested. You meet once a week on a Wednesday night, 2 to 3 hours, and you will see every aspect, law enforcement, corrections, civil process, animal control. You'll see the range, you'll see canine, you'll see our VirTra. We spent $350,000 on a VirTra judgmental simulator that shows you a police officer's perspective. It's 6 screens. So in a room like this, there's 6 screens around the police officer or police officers. They can control the lighting, and they can control any of the weapons, a handgun, it's not this gun, but it's laser equipped, pepper spray, taser, flashlight, all the stuff works interactive with the recording. The operator can change the scenario based on how well or how poorly the person is interacting with the scenario as it unfolds. But it certainly shows, and we've opened it to the media, to the politicians, to other agencies to train on it, and to members of the public who are interested in seeing it. Our Citizens Police Academy, the Harford Leadership Academy, to come in and see, what the quick judgments that men and women in uniform have to make, unfortunately, at times. But that is on the website, harfordsheriff.org, if someone's interested in signing up for that every year. So if you can't too late to notice this year, it'll be back around next year. And we are always recruiting. I don't know if you've seen some of our banners around. We are, since I've been sheriff, no one, I can tell you, there's an article out there, we have hired more people away from Baltimore City Police, 15 officers so far, than any other agency in the state. Others are close, 10 here, 11 there. There is a severe shortage of men and women wanting to be police officers, wanting to be correctional deputies. There's a whole lot of reasons for it, I believe. The economy's good. You see, we're putting cameras in. I love body cameras. We can't afford them. We have a request in to fund them, but we will eventually have a body camera program. But there's a lot of things. When you're a young person, you're thinking, well, do I want to go through all this? And we're not finding them. No one's finding them. The state police are like 100 troopers short. We have not filled our vacancies yet. We just sat a class 3 weeks ago, 15 deputies. We found 15, 2 quit the first day. So right away we were 2 short. So we are always looking, hiring. We maintain an interest list on our website. The minority hirings are terrible, and that's again across the board in every agency, including ours. The men and women on the street of the Harford County Sheriff's Office are not reflective of the community that we serve, the Harford County. That's a goal of mine. It hasn't gotten any better in my first term, it hasn't gotten any worse, but I'm committed to making it more reflective. The detention center numbers are a lot better. I have a diversity hiring group that I've formed. We have changed a lot in our hiring process, working with them, working with the faith-based community, trying to figure out how to address some of those things. And so far we haven't had it. And I guess the other end of that is, and then I'll stop, is that I have an absolute zero tolerance for, I talked about the Baltimore 6, the gun trace task force. Now it looks like it's going to be more than 6. We have let, I have let 11 people go. Every single employee who is hired by the Harford County Sheriff's Office, corrections, law enforcement, cadets, or civilian staff, I meet with them personally now. And their talk is, welcome aboard, we need the help, please don't make me fire you. We've had 11 people since I've been sheriff take me up on whether I'm sincere. We brought a disciplinary matrix to the Harford County Sheriff's Office which says integrity issues are termination. There is no way. Your word as a police officer and the 245 years of history of this office deserve better than someone endangering the reputation of this agency. So when I talk to them, I tell them, not only will you not work here, you will not work for any police department anywhere in the country because no one will touch you once you have a open, this gets reported to the police commission, no one will touch you. And we've had 11 people take us up on it. So I would be happy if that's 0. And this is after polygraphs, and this is after psychological screenings, and this is after a very thorough vetting that we get to that point and people still decide to make terrible decisions. And I tell them, there's pretty much nothing we can't get past. If your heart's in the right place, you're trying to do the right thing, and it will go bad. I don't care if you're changing a tire or you're doing police work. Nothing ever seems to go to plan. You speak honestly, we can get past it. You lie, you're done, and you're done for good. And again, that doesn't help me keep my ranks full, but I won't keep my ranks full when it would sacrifice the integrity of the agency. So with that, that's a quick overview. Maybe not so quick, maybe that's a long-winded overview, but I would be more than happy. And if anybody wants to ask
Thank you very much. Thank you. Definitely, so can we get some hands going on people that...
Hi, my name is Karen Waller. I live in Bel Air, and you talked about it during your introduction about safety in schools, and you also specifically mentioned churches. Currently, we don't have any laws on the books that allow for arming school personnel and churchgoers. I'm not sure why we would want to do that, because I don't believe that under extreme stress, these minimally trained persons will act in a way that's safe, and especially knowing that some professional first responders don't always act responsibly, which results in death and injuries. Like I said, currently Maryland law doesn't support either of those ideas. But that said, you've actively supported measures, or are you actively supporting measures that actually reduce the likelihood that a gun would be brought to school or church? Instead of waiting for someone to come to a school where the school resource officer would be responsible for protecting the campus, are we doing things to keep students from getting guns? Does the Sheriff's Department actively support safe storage of weapons and a program like that in homes? Also, are you enforcing Maryland's ERPO laws to help reduce the likelihood that someone who is suicidal or someone who is having a weapon that shouldn't have a weapon because they're either personally at risk or at risk of hurting others? And the last part of that is... sorry. Are you also in favor of, or will you support any gun safety legislation that the Maryland legislature, if they should pass additional gun safety legislation, will you support and enforce any such legislation?
Okay. I wrote them down. I'm good.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
How much time do we have? I will start it off by saying I am indeed very pro Second Amendment. I believe, I held up my hand twice to the swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. And until that Second Amendment disappears through the Supreme Court or through some other action, unfortunately, a constitutional convention or a revolution, and I don't want the revolution, I do believe that every citizen has a right to keep and bear arms. How that's done is a whole bunch of different ways, but taking the different things, the church and the schools, and those are actually two different things too. We're not sure that churches, we know some churches are. They are working with members of their congregations who are police officers in Harford County, who are police officers or who are military members who are highly trained, probably much more than me with 35 years of it, to be armed during the services because they fear what we have seen other places around the country. Criminals like to duplicate, they like the headlines, they like the notoriety, so they like to duplicate what they've seen elsewhere. Attack a school, see your name in print for a month, someone's going to follow suit, and that's the same with it. There's estimated to be more than 300 million guns in our country. The guns aren't going away. And if we got rid of them somehow, like Australia, they're still in Australia. I just read an article this morning about a gang shooting in Australia. The guns aren't gone. They're not going to go away. They'll flow over our borders, even if they were completely outlawed. You have to have a deterrent factor, in my opinion. Not everyone agrees with that, but that's my opinion. Businesses in Maryland are allowed to allow supervisory employees. You go to Wendy's, Burger King, the movie theater, Target. My wife's at Target all the time if you see some of my social media posts. They are allowed to have supervisory employees armed. No handgun permit is needed, and they have to set the rules up for how they want to do it. Now, a church is it considered a business? Under some tax laws, it's not. So that's where the confusion comes. So I have supported the Prisoner Protection Act the last two sessions. I don't think it's going to pass, which would make it clear that it enables the churches, if they wish to participate. If they don't, it doesn't force them. If they decide that they would like to have members of their congregation who they have confidence in, and they can set any level of training they want. They could require them to go to a 6-month trained shoot, don't shoot, scenario-based. They could do whatever they want. It would just enable them to do it. It's not mandating anything. So I am supportive of that. The schools, same kind of thing. I've had some conversations with some of Moms Demand Action, some maybe parts of both groups, in that in our schools, we have retired police officers. As teachers, we have retired military people. And my police officers are, there's only one school resource officer program in the state of Maryland that is not armed, where the police officers are not armed, and that's Baltimore City. And I think you're going to see that change. The deterrent factor is certainly what I believe in. I stand here today, I have my sidearm, he has his sidearm. Do you feel less safe with us here with our sidearms? Do you feel less safe? Okay. All right.
I guess one of the things is, we don't feel more safe thinking that the person sitting next to us in church is carrying a gun, because that person, if God forbid somebody comes into the church, into the sanctuary, there could be a crossfire. Innocent people could be killed, and I don't feel safer that way, and I don't think that that's something that we should encourage.
Well, it's not encouraging. It's enabling it if you want. So if you don't,
well, you're supporting it, so you're encouraging it.
Oh, if that's the way, I prefer to say I'm enabling them, because I have a different belief in that I don't want that shooter. I use Sandy Hook all the time as an example. There were teachers who were beyond my scale in my head of bravery, because there were teachers who sacrificed themselves to absorb bullets. Crossfire, there was no chance for crossfire. They just were absorbing bullets that were meant for kids. There should be, that shooter should come into any situation with the thought in their head that there's a threat to my safety. I'm not just going to go along and be able, as we saw in Texas, he continued to shoot until he was done, got in his truck, and then a citizen with an AR stopped him from going anywhere else and doing anything else. there's two different views here, but I know there's two different perspectives, and a lot of people in this group are passionate about one that's contrary to mine, but it's enabling, again, it's enabling legislation, not mandating. It would just give them the ability if they want it. So if this group felt majority said, and I know this isn't the Unitarians, this is the Together We Will.
Correct, where you're not
Right.
associated with the
But even like a meeting like this, in this facility, that legislation would have allowed you to make that choice. And obviously, I think this group would say, no, that's not for us. And that's fine. URBOs, we lead the state in URBOs. I think we're still leading.
I think Hamilton County might have one or two more than us, but we're double the population.
With double the population. Extreme risk protection orders passed last year, Maryland's red flag law. So yes, in fact, we took every supervisor and commander and paid them overtime and had classes over at the college to teach them, because this law was passed at the 12th hour. It still is very confusing. I'm not 100% supportive of it. I am supportive of the safety part. We have served more. We spent training all of our people on what to do and how to do it. It cost us about $10,000 in overtime because I had to pull them off the shifts to do it. We were the only jurisdiction in the state to do that. Once we did that, we found that we were serving. Everyone's like, why Harford County got so many red flag laws, serving so many URBOs? It's because we took the time to train our people to stay in accordance with the law. And I guess quickly closing the gun safety legislation, I was in Annapolis till 3 in the morning 2 weeks ago, testifying against bills that I think run contrary to people's Second Amendment rights, and in support of others that I think are, like the Prisoner Protection Act, enabling, as the sheriff. A fellow sheriff made the comment that he has no plans to comply, and I don't know if this is kind of where that's coming from.
Yes.
And one of the delegates asked me about that, and those words never came out of my mouth. In fact, I had a conversation with that sheriff afterward. I will certainly be happy to challenge anything that I run. A gun take-back is something that I confiscation is something I certainly think runs contrary to the Second Amendment. One bill in there I thought particularly did that. If that would have passed, I would have used the power.
Which bill was that?
The one that would have banned the legally sold guns from 2013 to 19, ARs. You could buy from 2013, in fact I have one that I bought in 2015 or 16, an AR style rifle, heavy barrel, was not outlawed.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear
Yeah.
which one that was.
So it would, had you gone through the background process like me, and bought one of these firearms and did everything right, stored it right, safety, I'm all for safety. We issue the gun locks with our weapons, we enforce the law.
I'm going to just interject
Yeah,
because I think this could just, we could go on. I think I'm going to just shortcut what you're saying is you're going to enforce the law. You might advocate against something, but you're going to enforce the law. Is that what you're saying?
No, on that one, I would try to challenge it through the court system and try to get to the Supreme Court. And I told the governor's representative down there that day, hey, if it comes to knocking on people's doors who bought these guns legally, went through the background process, and you want me to send a police officer out there and knock on their door and say, give me your gun, they need to send the state police and not my deputies, because we're going to see police officers being killed left and right in this country. And that is something I'm not going to put whether I leave office over that could be the case, but I will not put my officers in jeopardy, their personal safety in jeopardy on a gun confiscation.
Is that what the bill's asking?
Can I give you
Yes.
ask you a little follow-up question? Very
Sure.
quick. So when you talk about the safety officers in the schools,
Yes.
you mentioned that the budget doesn't permit coverage of the elementary schools. Yes, so you have it in the middle schools and the high schools. And my question is, why is age of student the determinant as to where you place your people?
Well, well, for sure, because we have 40, I told you, we need 27 elementary schools. All the high schools, we have 11 high schools in the county and 9 middle schools.
Now, I understand why you can't cover everybody. I'm just wondering why your criterion is, we will cover the older kids and not the younger kids.
The school resource officer program started in the high schools, and it started because the officers are interacting with young men and women coming into adolescence, coming through their developmental years, dealing with relationships on a whole different level than you see elementary schools, and establishing that we have school resource officers who solve a lot of our crimes through their relationships in the schools. So the school resource officer is not just, I do security at the courthouse. We have deputies at the courthouse, at the county executive's building, at the county council building. Security is somebody standing there, magnetometer, winding you, making you turn your belongings in like you see at the airport. That's not what a school resource officer is. School resource officer is a police officer assigned to the school, not in teaching classes, but patrolling the school grounds. That deterrent factor, that someone knows that there's a police officer there, and that person who is a role model for the children there and has that first-hand, that personal relationship, and they develop information. Khalid Mitchell, one of our, and I think he's going to retire on me here in a year or so, he is one of our best school resource officers. He solves a lot of the crimes that we see down in the lower end because he knows who all the players are.
Okay, I'm just, real quick, very quick, very brief, and then we're going to...
I just wanted to give you the opportunity. You said that you were a strong proponent of the Second Amendment, and I don't think anything I said in my question indicated that I did not support the Second Amendment. But I want to allow you to clarify, because in your commentary you said that you think that anybody should be able to have a gun, and I don't think you mean anybody. I think because convicted felons and people that have been... So I think if you could just clarify that, any, legal...
Yeah, you are 100% right. Any law-abiding citizen who doesn't have a cause for their right to be taken away from them. And when you commit a felony, mental health is where...
And background checks.
The NICS check. When you have done things, I wish we had a way we didn't have to do the background checks, but that's the only way that we can vet people to find out whether they should be prohibited. And there are certainly people who should be prohibited. Look at the shootings that we've had here, and I can tell you, Advanced Granite, the Rite Aid, those two incidents, the incident in there where we lost our two deputies, mental health. Mental health ties in all three of those. That is where, I tell all the time, we focus on the safety of the firearm. I'm all for that. I'm all for keeping them out of the reach of children and anything that secures them, gun locks. What I think we need to also focus on just as aggressively, or more aggressively, is the issue of mental health in our society.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to the next question.
Okay, I have a question about the 287G program.
Sure.
Since the inception in 2016, how many arrestees have received detainee status and how many have been detained?
I want to say, well, it's the same thing. I want to say we're somewhere around 95, I don't have the exact number with me, I want to say it's around 95 detainers have been filed by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement saying that that person is being held on those charges for additional investigation by that agency.
Okay, out of those that were detained under the MOA, how many of them had to be released?
Out of those 99? Oh, I don't have that number. I would think none, because then they would be released by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be their decision to release them.
Do you have the demographics as far as nationalities, citizenship status, or anything like
I
that?
do not, but I can tell you they're from all over the globe. I don't have it with me, but they're from all over the globe.
Do you know if any of the ones that were detained ultimately were proven to be U.S. citizens?
I don't. I know there's a case in Michigan where that happened, and in anything you do, and I talked about changing the tire earlier, there are going to be mistakes made, but there have to be repercussions when there are mistakes made that infringe on someone's rights. And in Michigan, there was a citizen who was held, I think, for 2 days after they should have been released on a 287G detainer, and they were proven to be a citizen. I do know we have one case where, because of our partnership, the gentleman who was in custody for a crime, he couldn't prove his citizenship, couldn't get a driver's license, hindered him from getting employment. Because of our partnership, we were able to prove he was a citizen and help him get his driver's license and help him, hopefully, I don't know what happened to him after he got released, but hopefully, I have a story to counter the one. Does that make the one in Michigan right? No, that person was treated wrong, and there should be some penalty for someone to pay whoever made the mistake.
Are any of these statistics publicly available?
Everything, other than through the MOU, everything belongs to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So that it's available, whatever they decide to release.
Okay, next. Who else has
Memorandum of understanding. Police are the kings and queens of acronyms. We love our acronyms.
Education will fight you on that.
Semi-military.
Indeed.
Hi, thanks for coming.
Sure.
Some of the people that you encounter are not necessarily people who are committing crimes, but might be just in, like you said, mental health or having different troubling issues. And so one of the things I'm concerned about as a mom with a kid with special how are you equipped to deal with mental health crises, not necessarily a crime, but a family member saying we have a crisis coming, do you have somebody specifically trained to deal with these issues, like a social worker? Are your officers trained to identify people who might not be presenting physically? Like there are a lot of people with non-physical disabilities, but mental disabilities or intellectual disabilities that's not obvious. So you have them trained to be able to pick up the signs, because often the way that you interact with these people needs to be adjusted. They might not be able to answer the question appropriately, like a kid with autism might not be able to even say their name, not because they're nonverbal, but in a situation when they're anxious and have anxiety, they might start sounding, like they're guilty or something, but when they're not, but they just get more nervous. So my question is, how are you training the officers, and is there somebody we can call specifically and that is the go-to person for these issues, and the officers are becoming aware of these issues?
So we do. There's a lot of training that's mandated by the Police Training Commission. What all the specific classes are, I don't know. I can tell you, when I went to the police academy, in order to be a police officer in Maryland, you were there for 22 weeks. It's now 28. There's so much additional training that goes in, and a large part of it's around mental health. We do classes. Shelley Allred, Pathfinders for Autism, she comes in and trains with our people, has trained in services, and that started before I was sheriff, but we've continued that. We have on our payroll Sean Dundon, who is, what's the acronym? CITD. Critical Incident, who is trained up. We just attended a graduation for some of the officers from all the allied agencies that Sean and a member of the health department put on. So yes, there is a lot of training that goes into trying to, and I can tell you, the men and women who are out there today are so much better than I was ever trained, or the colonel was ever trained to be a police officer. Much more patient, and I think it's because there's such a demand. I can't go a day taking a 10-minute commute from my house to the office without hearing us get a call for a possible suicidal subject or some other issue related to mental health. So yeah, I will say, do we handle every incident 100% correct? Or as people might like, maybe not, but are they trained? Yes. Are they much better trained today than ever before? Absolutely.
I appreciate your answering. I guess as a mom with special needs, I think, hearing about cases where there's actually been a death as a result of miscommunication and misunderstanding, where even if somebody's suicidal, they might actually end up causing their own death. But I'm still very nervous, and I've heard you say this before in one of the other forums. But is there a specific person that we can go to? Let's say we are in trouble, we need help, but I'm scared to call because I'm nervous about my child. Do you have somebody who I can say, I know this person gets it?
Sure.
I mean, there aren't a lot of people out there who actually get autism. It's very difficult.
Right.
So, I love that you're getting trained, but is there some way you can allay our fears and have us meet with somebody so that they can interact and we can see that
I'm
they
sure Sean Dundon
interact?
would come up and speak to the group if Sean Dundon.
Yeah.
You have my email, so yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the parents are just terrified of what would happen if they called a police officer to their home. And not because they don't think that the police officers don't mean well, but kids with autism are totally misunderstood by anxiety and often get to the wrong end of the stick, especially even in schools. And my kid is homeschooled partly because some of the ways that he was dealt with in the school ended up being traumatic for him because he was misunderstood.
Right.
So you can understand there's a lot of trauma behind it.
I didn't know what autism was back when I was a young trooper. I had no idea. We weren't trained. We may have got something, but I mean, we get trained in our basic. We provide the training in our basic academy. And then through our in-services, I know we've done it twice since I've been sheriff that she's been back. And pulling the cop off the road as part of the in-service, means less patrol time. My job, is to try to keep the maximum amount of patrol time, but make sure that they are equipped to do the job by training them properly. So we evaluate every year what we're going to give them during in-service, and it's a precious amount of time that you have to only allocate so much of, and we've had the Pathfinders training for autism twice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Chris, we're going to go to Chris next.
Thank you. My question is in reference to how NOAA is being implemented in Harford County. What language supports are provided for detainees who are non-English speaking or who speak and understand only limited English? And this is a three-part question. How is the detained person advised that they can request an interpreter? And what is the cost for this service, and who pays for it? Is it paid by the Sheriff's Office, or is it paid by ICE?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, if we arrest a person, we arrest a person, so whether they speak English or not, whether they're booked on a burglary or DWI or an assault or a murder, they're coming into our facility, and we have to communicate with them. So I don't know what services we use at the Sheriff's Office. I know we have several people who speak foreign languages on staff there, but do we have an outside service that we go to all the time? I'd have to find out and get back to you. Whether there's a different system through ICE, for those who are, detained or detainer is lodged on through ICE, whether it's a separate system or they're using the same system through the Sheriff's Office, I don't know. I'd have to find out. Did I get all three elements? I don't.
Well, were you asking about at the time of arrest? Because if it's at the time of the arrest and that person can't communicate, it doesn't help will you wait to the jail, right? So
Well, I think it's more in the detention center.
What's created?
All three.
Yeah, really, all three.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
I mean, what resource or recourse does that individual have if no one is available, or if the person who does speak that individual's language is not available? What happens? How does that person inform it?
I don't know.
We have language lines that come through the Department of Emergency Services that allow us to communicate, and then there's also a network of police departments throughout the state that if it comes across, like Mandarin Chinese would be one that we would have difficulty getting somebody for, and things like that. But we have resources to be able to find people to communicate.
And is that those resources or paying for those?
There's no charge. There's no charge for that. We need to communicate with them as much as they need to communicate with us. There's no charge for this.
It might even be a phone app that you.
Well, like I said, there's language lines that we can call against people from different languages.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, Sherrif.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, mine is also about the 287G program. How has this program affected your budget? And also, what have been the costs associated with participation in the program? And lastly, has ICE ever reimbursed the Sheriff's Office for any of these costs?
The only cost that we bear is the on-duty time for the deputies to go to be trained. It is I think it's 2 weeks, 2-week training in Charleston, South Carolina at their federal training facility. So my deputies are on the clock getting their salary during that 2-week, that 80-hour, each 40-hour week. ICE pays for the flights, the car use, the food, the lodging. I'm sorry?
It's about $4,000.
For a 2-work week?
Counting flight, everything.
Oh, we don't pay any of that, right. I'm only providing, ICE pays everything else.
Oh, you're only providing salary.
We are only providing on-duty time for the person to be trained, and we haven't hired anybody additional to participate in this program. It's an ancillary duty where, you have somebody from security who's walking the floor here, somebody comes in, and they need to do something underneath the umbrella of the ICE program. They go do that, and then they go back to their security post. So we don't have a way. It's minimal. We don't have a way to break it down into what those costs are, but it's all personnel time related. They ran T1 or some computer line into the facility at their expense. All the computers are ICE's. It did not cost us a penny, and we have never sought reimbursement on the salaries. In fact, what's in the, I can't, because it's in the memorandum of understanding, the MOU, that those are what we will bear, the on-duty expense. That's the only expense that comes to us.
So are you tracking that? I think that was part of the
No.
question.
No. To me, it's minimal. It's, I have all my task force deputies, well, not all of them, 5 or 6 of the task force deputies are federally deputized also as ATF, DEA agents. We don't track that either. We work with our federal partners on programs that make Harford County safer.
Thanks for coming to speak
Sure.
to the group today. I also have a few questions about the ICE
Sure.
program. I understand that ICE requires a meeting within 9 months after the certification of the sheriff's office employees. So have you had those meetings?
We've had 2 public meetings. At the first one, we had 1 person. At the second one, we had 0 people.
When is the next one? Okay, maybe we need to.
It's advertised, it's on, by requirements.
Right.
We have a whole section on our webpage, harfordsheriff.org, that explains that ICE has a copy of the MOU, has a copy of all the requirements, it has a copy of the presentation from last year, which nobody came to see. It's out there.
Well,
When is the next one?
I don't know when the next one is off the top of my head.
Where do you advertise when?
On our website.
have there been any modifications to the program after the original memorandum?
No.
No modifications. All right. So do you plan to renew the memorandum, and what would be the options for any public input?
I don't think there is a renewal, other than a pullout clause. I don't think.
Oh, it's just there permanent?
It's just an agreement that goes on. I think our agreement with the state police before when I was down there was over 20 years old. So the memorandum stands in effect until rescinded.
Okay, and it's not been modified?
It's not been modified.
Okay. And then my other question was, I believe in the, you made a distinction between the officers on the streets versus the ones in the corrections
Yes.
facility, and that this memorandum only kicks in after someone.
Correct.
So do you give any training to the officers working on the streets in not asking any immigration-related questions in the course of their police work?
I was just in Annapolis testifying on this as well, and I know your involvement in this. You were stopped the Bel Air thing.
I was,
Right.
and I was asked a completely irrelevant, unconstitutional immigration-related question.
Well, and I don't know. You know, and the officer knows what was said there. That's why I'm all for body cameras, because it's going to show us, as the in-car cameras have showed us, a more complete overview of the whole situation. I'm not questioning your integrity at all. I'm just saying, what was in the officer's heart when he came out and said, what was the exact words to you?
Are you here illegally?
Oh, well, that's pretty clear. That's what he said.
I was on my own street.
I can tell you that our deputies, and never in my 35 years have we ever been taught to ask or told not to ask about, it's just that much of a non-factor.
But given that it is a factor, I wonder if they need training. I mean, since it's happening,
Right.
I wonder if, in light of the existence of this agreement and the general impression that the immigration status is somehow relevant, do you make a proactive effort to assure officers that it is in fact not relevant and they should not be asking such questions?
I think our deputies, I do not believe we need to have a policy for our deputies not to ask if people, and I don't think it needs to be in law if you're in the country legally, because I think that that's an anomaly. Should not happen, but there are times, because there's 2 bills in now. One of the bills would not allow you to ask a person their place of birth. Well, that's something that's necessary to, again, you could be wanted for murder in Baltimore or in Detroit or in California somewhere. We need to know who people are, and that's a personal identifier information that goes on every FBI fingerprint card for at least the last 40 years. I think deal with the incidents when something happens and it's found to be wrong on police action, which we do. I told you, I have no tolerance for integrity violations. And if that's the way that officer addressed you, then that should have at least been a training issue at his agency. not my agency, so I don't know how it was dealt with. But the police officer, I know, I've heard of stories, and I thought it might be the case with yours, where someone detects an accent. Like if you call my headquarters building, you get Miss Bonnie, who has the deepest Southern drawl, and people say, "Where are you from?" Because she's from Tennessee, and no one calls and asks that question with malice. They call because of her accent. It's not meant maliciously, and police officers are human beings. So if they hear something and they ask a question, not meaning anything. That's not that example. That's not that example. That question.
Yeah, so, but what does her being from Tennessee have to do with her committing a crime in Maryland? And that's kind of what I got, so maybe I misunderstood what you were saying when you
Yeah,
had to
maybe I
ask
did
somebody
that wrong. I don't know.
where
Did you, I don't.
You said that you had to ask, there's a bill, and I misunderstood this maybe, there was a bill that you had to ask somebody where they were, or
You can't, you could not ask where anyone is, their place of birth.
Okay.
And their place of birth is a personal identifier, as much as their height and weight and eye color, in the systems that we have.
So if this had happened in your agency, if someone had asked someone who was not arrested or suspected for murder or something of that nature, if somebody had asked them this kind of question related to their immigration status, what action would you take?
I would probably try, we would do some other investigation to find out what was the intent, and then if necessary, I would think retraining for that officer because of the perception of it. But there, just to, in all fairness, I wasn't involved in your case. I only know, again, what I read in the paper. You and I have had this discussion before.
I'm not focusing on my case. I'm asking, in light of this policy, what kind of training do officers get to make sure that civil rights of law-abiding citizens are respected?
Oh, they get a ton of training to make sure people's civil rights are not violated. That's what the whole police academy is about, to make sure that we protect people's civil rights. Whether the question is asked, now, and I'm distinguishing from the way the question is asked of you, to just asking a person for their location of their birth, or where you're from, something like that, in a not seeking to be out there for any kind of immigration purpose, but just general questioning. Where are you from? You're trying to figure out if somebody's from Baltimore. Where are you from? And all of a sudden that's taken the wrong way because the person happens to be from outside the country. That should not be a crime or a policy violation.
But that's not what happened.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not speaking to her incident because that's very distinct language.
Truth be told,
I think
that
the
happens
concern
in
is what will be put in place to make sure these kinds of incidents don't happen again.
That incident should have been dealt with, and I can tell you, 35 years of doing this, it's the only one I'm familiar with. 5 years as sheriff, and it's the only one I'm familiar with here locally in our area, out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of citizen contacts.
So we're going to go over here next?
Yes.
Hi, Sheriff Gahler. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
My name's Lisa. I appreciate your statement about trying to recruit people of color, and perhaps women as well. I don't know what your current statistics are with regard to your workforce, what percentage are people of color versus what are women as well. A while back, when things were very heated in the NFL, there were some folks who were making social justice statements on behalf of Black Lives Matter. And you were very vocal on social media about your disdain for that, something about getting rid of all your Ravens garb and so forth. Do you think that that is perhaps a deterrent for people of color wanting to work under your leadership? And then my last question is, have you used the N-word, and if so, how many times?
No to the second question. Easy as you know what to answer the second question, because there is no way, unless, in my opinion, there's no way that word slips out of your mouth unless you use it routinely. It is, you can't make excuses for using that word. And again, this is my view and my opinion, and I know what's at the center of the controversy right now. And I think the word's terrible no matter who uses it. I sat down to watch Luke Cage. It's a superhero type of thing on Netflix, and it's like every third word is the word set out. And I think we should you know, we should treat that word the way it deserves to be treated, and total banning of the word. So the second question first. The first question, no, I don't think so. I think that we, overall, our office attracts a demographic that exceeds our county demographics. We are about 87% white, 86, 87, about 12% black, 13 in the county, with the other numbers, with the other demographics mixing in the difference. We are about 30% minority, distinctly black. We're about 30% black, 70% white.
Latino as well?
I'm sorry?
Latino as well?
No, that's very small. That would be smaller. I mean, those are the two big demographics of our county. So overall, the agency is very representative of the community we serve. Where we suffer is on the law enforcement side. When I came in, we were 4%. So of the men and women, 4% are black that go out there. Of the 300 deputies, we are 4% black of the men. That's the people that you see, that you call 911, and they come to your house. That's the number I inherited. That's the number we're still at. It has nothing to do with my stance on the NFL. And on the NFL, I've said, I'll stand with Colin Kaepernick. I'll stand, but if he wants to take a knee, I will stand there and defend his right to take a knee in front of the courthouse, in front of my building. I think choosing the 2 minutes of our national anthem to make a statement, no matter what that statement is wrong. That was my belief. And that is my belief. So, no, I think the overall demographics, women, we have 27 female deputies out of the 300, so almost 10% women. But we need more of both. And we need more white males to apply. We have not turned away one applicant who has made it through the entire hiring process. So if your background, things that we have to look at by law, prior drug use, prior criminal activity, psychological, physical, if you pass all of that, we have turned no one away. And this is true of every police department. I said the Maryland State Police, where I came out, there were more than 100 troopers short. They can't find them, and then their diversity numbers are just as bad.
Yeah, let's get just a couple more in. Jan, so you.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
Is this on? Yep. I want to get back to the MOA and talk about accountability, because my understanding is that this was something, the MOA is something that you, the Sheriff's Department unilaterally made this agreement with ICE. In other words, our county council, our county executive has nothing to do with this.
Correct.
And so, so it leads citizens to wonder about accountability, because it's not going to be in those elected representatives, right? So the question is, who provides oversight of the program? Who assesses its effectiveness, its cost benefits, and who protects Harford County citizens and visitors if ICE officers overstep?
Well, if you go to the website and you look at all the information there, you'll see the MOU covers, MOU covers how the program will be overseen. ICE oversees the majority of it. We have to comply with their rules when we're operating in their aspect of the program. As far as who, from this side, you do have an elected official who made a decision, and that's your elected sheriff. And it's a program that fully falls under my office. It's not something that the council or the county executive oversees. We have an elected sheriff here in Harford County, as do many counties, responsible for law enforcement and corrections. And so it's a decision that's mine to make. It's not like it's someone else's decision to participate or not to participate. So that rests fully with me. My decision to go in, it would be my decision to come out if that day ever comes. I guess I measure, there's nothing that I see as a cost. When I look at budgets and I look at the $100,000 it costs me to put a cop on the road or something like that, the time that we spend participating in the 287G program at the jail is not a cost that crosses my mind, in that it is an impact to our budget or our operation at the facility. So with that said, I guess I'm the one who evaluates if it came a time where ICE, and they have people there as well, not 24/7, but during Monday through Friday business hours, there's usually an ICE agent or two in the facility. So if all of a sudden they said, well, we can't afford to have our people here, you're going to do 100% of the work, and I said all of a sudden, no, that's not fair, then I might pull out. But so far, this program, again, is a public safety matter for me. I know from 35 years of experience that criminals are going to, for the most part, reoffend. We do a lot of things to try to rehabilitate. We have the substance abuse unit, back to the heroin thing that we've started, trying to steer these people off of this heinous drug and get them on a path to not reoffending for whatever brought them in. I'm all for that. Anybody that doesn't come back, makes Harford County safer is fine. But with that said, I'm not about to open the door if I don't have to and let people come back into the community who are going to. And MS-13 numbers are prime examples of people who will.
Can I ask you one more, hold on, just one more question. Have you attended the ICE training yourself?
I have not. I've been down to the facility. I've been to the classrooms, I've been to the graduation, I've seen some of the materials, but no, I haven't taken 2 weeks to sit through the training.
Well, he's answered most of my question, because you're saying that you're not even going to bring it back out to the public before you reinstate, because it's coming up in October to reinstate the, it expires in October, am I correct?
Oh, I don't know, no, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Because you have said a lot of things that I don't think you're very aware of, but in October you have to reapply.
June 30th, 2019, unless terminated earlier by either party. Prior to the expiration of the effective period, ICE and the Harford County Sheriff's Office shall review the MOA for consideration whether to modify, extend, or permit the MOA to lapse.
Okay.
So you're not going to bring it to the public to see how the public feels?
We will continue our participation in 287G.
That's what I said. You already answered.
Without our.
So, Sheriff, let me ask this question.
Sure.
I do think it appears, there's a lot of interest on this.
Sure.
Would it be all right if we submitted maybe some
Absolutely.
questions?
Yeah, and I didn't come with the MOU, so I apologize for not knowing that answer. But
Okay, so
it was
thank
3 years
you.
ago I
I'm
signed
not
the
going to
first
take it,
one.
I just like, just
Sure.
a couple more in and go back there. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Sheriff. I'm Steve Preston, resident of Abington. And thank you for coming today and answering our questions. So I'm kind of curious about the state of some legal action that had been started last July by the ACLU of Maryland. I believe they filed a lawsuit against ICE to obtain some information, and they tried to work through your office through the Maryland Public Information Act request. And I would like to know if there's been any outcomes from your office into granting any such informational request.
No, it's not our information to release, so we are not named in the lawsuit.
No, I realize you're not named in the lawsuit, but they still attempted to go through.
It's not my information to release, so I'm not entitled to release it.
But it's information that you've gathered, sir, right? And
It's information we have at the facility because of the partnership, for sure.
You're in possession of such information, is my point.
I would say my people have access to ICE's data.
Right.
It's not our data.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, okay. And the second part is, has there been any other legal action against your office to obtain such information or to question any part of this agreement?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I get briefed by the law department on anything that we get sued on. We get sued a lot. It's the nature of the beast, but not that I'm familiar with.
Hi, Sheriff Gahler, Sharon Jacobs. Quick question just regarding programs you have in place for recruiting minorities. I know I'm retired military, but when I retired, one of the programs that was brought to our attention was the Military to Teachers program. Have the National Sheriff's Association or Harford County considered doing something like that with the military? I know General Taylor is a very big community supporter and advocate for our community here, and we are always retiring soldiers who have passed background checks and of all nationalities, including minorities and Latinos and Hispanics, that may be great members of the law enforcement community here.
Yes, I got a, General Taylor's great. We had General Crawford before him, and he was great too. General Taylor's taken it to a whole new level. He's just so involved in everything, including the opioid epidemic. Last year, did we sign the MOA with the United States Army? We signed an agreement that we guarantee every soldier an opportunity to interview with the Harford County Sheriff's Office. I think every member, civilian or soldier. I was never in the service, so I don't want to do the terms disjustice. But any member leaving service will be guaranteed an interview, even if we don't have the spot, so that we will have them on the record if we have to have them. So that's just one of many things that we have done on our efforts. I formed a diversity hiring group, and we met a couple of times and went over the entire process, went over our numbers as an office, and went over the demographic numbers, and we went through every step of the process, what's required by law, and suggestions were made, things like a tattoo policy. I was trying to hold a hard line on the tattoo policy. Every other police department's kind of given them off. And this is because things become subjective or change. And I give the example of, I was saying, nothing on the sleeves, hands, neck, face. Nothing open collar, nothing to show on your neck. So every other police department had not everyone, but most of them had given that up. And I give the example of a Confederate flag. We could have had a police officer hired with a Confederate flag 10 years ago, and most of society would have not looked at it. It looked at differently today than it was 10 years ago.
Not most. 10 years ago was the same for me.
I can tell you.
52 years ago was the same for me. It would never be acceptable.
That where the passage of time changes the perspective on an image. And if you're not going to use that one, then I give the example of somebody goes out and gets, I don't know, trying to think of something that might be anti-Semitic or something. Somebody gets something tattooed. I've seen people get thin blue line things tattooed on them. And then the question is, it's been questioned in courts that they are too pro-police. Even though they're police, that this shows that they're going to be overly aggressive because they're that pro-police to have it tattooed on them. Anyway, I tried to hold the line on tattoos. I changed that policy because so many coming out of the service in particular have tattoos. So now we've changed it to where we look at it, we try to screen for gang type of things, but other than that, if it's not offensive, that we deem offensive today, we give them a hire. That doesn't mean 5 years from now they're going to walk into some community here in this county and somebody see it. And I can tell you, one of the instances, the shooting in Baltimore City.
The next one, but we had an example of an individual who applied, who had a Volkswagen tattoo on his forearm. And he got a tattoo of a Volkswagen symbol on his forearm because he likes Volkswagens, and he owned a Volkswagen, and he thought Volkswagens were cool. Our background investigators saw it, and they do reviews to try to search things on the internet to see if they have any meaning. And they lost a Nazi Volkswagen symbol, which was the one he had tattooed on his arm. He didn't even know that that's what he had on his arm. At least he said that. And so he didn't get hired, but not necessarily because of the tattoo. He didn't get hired because of other things that were in his background. But had we not done that, he would have had that tattoo out there, and maybe somebody who knew what it was, then we would have a police officer with a tattoo on his arm.
And real quick, we changed some other things, but just like, one of the things we did, and all the agencies did, there was a mentality before, and in my organization here, that if they want a job bad enough, they'll come. We're going to offer the PT on this day, and if they want a job bad enough, whether they're getting married, having a baby, they have to work that day, they'll show up if they want this job bad enough. That's out the window. So we started offering multiple days, the morning, the evening, the weekend, different locations around the county. That was something that the group recommended that we did, but it really hasn't changed our numbers. And I'm open to suggestions. Anybody have any suggestions for having, same as I say on all the opioid epidemics, I'm always open to suggestions. If someone has one and says, have you tried this? I'm not afraid to try it. If it doesn't work, we'll back up and try something else.
Sheriff Gahler, thanks for coming. Sure. Do you have aspirations for higher office?
I don't.
The reason I ask,
right.
And I think you do a great job across the board, except for there are some things that you come out and speak about in public that I think you would be better off not speaking about. So you I'll say because I read and I go, oh, why is he saying that? You've got the Republican vote here, you got the Democrat vote, we were all behind you. And when you come out and say things like, I'm for the border wall, I'm with Trump on this or that, and I go, oh my God.
I don't want to say
it hurts.
Right, no, and certainly I could take this. I didn't
Somebody you want to do it.
I didn't take this job because I want to hurt anybody, and I certainly don't think. I think the greatest weakness, and I've surrounded my people with people who aren't yes men, but people who think different and give different opinions, because we shouldn't all be thinking alike. But yeah, I do think, and I think if you follow the train of history, border security was important to both parties, particularly southern border security was important to both parties until Trump got elected. And then I think when we see another, maybe I'm wrong, I think when we see another Democrat president, maybe in 2020. Maybe, that's the way the process works. When it happens, I think we'll see a swing back. And I've stayed consistent that drugs are coming in over our border. We need to control it. And that is, I don't do that out of respect or care for what President Trump is.
You're going to give us an answer on that?
Oh, no, I'm happy to answer the question. I have people, I took, outside of Governor Hogan, I had the largest vote win in the last election. I had more crossover votes, not that everyone's going to vote for me. I had 30,000 people voted for the other person. But I had the largest vote win. I love the job I have. I have some of the money people want me to run for county executive when Barry Glassman's term's over. I have said I will only run for that in the future if I can't get public safety funding, because that's the only thing the county executive controls, the budget. So everything else comes through the sheriff's office. This is what I've done since I was 19 years old. I love this profession. I love the men and women who come in here and put their lives and sadly have given their lives for the citizens of this county. So no, my aspirations are here. Certainly 4 years from now and maybe 4 years after that, health and everything staying relatively, I'm not the healthiest model of a person, but health and everything staying what they are. I don't have other aspirations. This is a dream job for me.
I promise, only 2 more questions,
Sure.
then we'll cut it off because you...
Hi, sir. I'm trying to understand your interpretation of what parts of the Constitution you would enforce versus what parts of the Constitution you do enforce.
Sure.
You said you enforce the Second Amendment. I understand that. It's fairly important. But just as important is the First Amendment, right, to speak.
Sure.
But yet, when it comes to black people speaking up, you'll burn a Raven shirt saying, that's no good. My rights are more important than your rights. Now, see, racism isn't particularly just saying a bad word. Racism is found in policy.
Yes.
And policy is saying that your opinion doesn't count. That 400 years you just contributed to this nation and got nothing for it, that doesn't count. Your right to protest, that doesn't count. Your contribution that your father made in the service and your brother made in the service and in Vietnam when they got hooked on opium and every other conceivable thing you could imagine, that doesn't count. Because my right to protest trumps your right to protest. To me, that's just another avenue, another way of saying, you know what, we got it right, you got it wrong, you toe the line. This is our interpretation of the Constitution. You do what we say. And I don't know if you know it or not, but it's a very intimidating thing when you get on the job site the next time, or the next day, and you say, have a lot of white guys around the cooler going like, that's right, you toe the line.
Yes. To answer the question that I think was in there was, do I support the First and the Second Amendment? Absolutely. I said when I was asked this question a little while ago, I will stand up beside Colin Kaepernick and defend him, his right to take a knee. I was respectful. May I answer the question? I will defend his right to take a knee. When he does it in his uniform at work, he is speaking on behalf of his organization. If one of my deputies do something in this uniform, they will join the other 11 people who depart, because when they are speaking in this outfit, they are not speaking as an individual. They are speaking as a member representing the Harford County Sheriff's Office. when he does it, this is Jeff Gahler's opinion, but when he does it in that uniform, he is representing the belief of the league that the action is okay.
No, not at all. Well, he got, hey, Sheriff Gahler, he got $80 million, so it don't really matter. He got $80 million for that kneeling. But I think what Carlos is really trying to say is that you're very influential in the community, and you have to be careful. And I understand, on a personal level, you and I, we cool.
Yes.
So I don't want you to think
No,
that I'm
I'm
hardly
cool with everybody.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm cool with Carlos.
But you got to be careful about your position, because your position is very powerful. Because actually, when I first went to the MOA, where I met Lisa at, Voices of Racial Change, actually one of your representatives, we had a discussion about the news that you guys were looking at, and I was concerned about that. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of people were looking at Fox News, and my problem is he was telling me that wouldn't I be intimidated if I rolled up to a car and a black person was in there? I said, well, wait a sec, where'd you get that from? And so that's a concern. It kind of all flows in. You got to understand, you have an awesome responsibility, and people take your lead, and maybe you didn't do it, but they will take it and run with it, because some people are just that crazy and that ignorant or whatever, what have you. So just be careful. I guess that's what his point is.
I believe a lot of politicians, and this isn't going to make anyone feel any better about whether you agree with me or not or certain things. I believe a lot of politicians will come and feed a group at the line and then go say something else to another group. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I told you what I do to people who don't tell the truth. I'm going to tell you, not that I'm not going to get some facts for all this, the date on the MOA, but I'm certainly going to be honest with you, and that's my commitment to the citizens of Harford County. I was elected based on what I promised this community I would do, and not 100% of the community is going to agree with it, but I'm going to do the things that I promised to do as effectively as I can do them, and all of that centered on keeping Harford County as a safer place to live.
So
I know this gentleman here was...
I'm just going to point out what you're saying there. That statement was awesome.
Hey.
Making a statement about what Colin Kaepernick should or should not be doing does not really directly relate to your job. And so what you're just hearing from the a small segment of the African American community is that when you make statements like that, it has maybe some unintended consequences. And I think what people are looking for is for you to acknowledge that is what you're hearing, that you're hearing what they're saying.
I understand the perspective, and I don't expect us all to agree on things, but as an individual, now that was posted on my personal, it didn't go on to, because a lot of things go on to, it didn't go on to the Harford County Sheriff's Office page with 50,000 followers on our page. It went on to my personal page. That's my personal political page. Yeah, but it's not the Harford County Sheriff, it's my page. But I'm elected official. That's okay.
So my question is along the same lines. And I didn't know that was his question. But to say that Kaepernick shouldn't kneel during the national anthem, when coming from our perspective, what the national anthem stands for and represents, when it talks about all of us being created equal and that type of thing, as African Americans, we don't feel that. It's absolutely his right, whether he's in uniform or not, to kneel whenever he wants to kneel. It doesn't make it wrong because he kneels during the national anthem. To kneel during the national anthem for military, when a soldier or military member is deceased or passes on, when they present that family with a flag, that's absolutely what they do, is kneel. It's in honor of that person. But to go back to Kaepernick, it's understanding, it's exactly what Delane just said, it's understanding that we come from different perspectives. It's not to say that your perspective is right or wrong, but just acknowledge that some people come from different perspectives and from different places. And so even for cops, right, where did that come from? For us, it was the captured slaves, right? Yes, so policing, right, and returning them. So all of that plays a part in the way we see things, and we just ask that you acknowledge that. Right. Yeah, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. Just acknowledge.
Sure, but I do understand that each of us are individuals and we all have different perspectives, and as groups, we have different histories and different perspectives, absolutely 100%. But I can't help but go back and make the example and say it was one of my white male deputies who wanted to take a knee during one of our ceremonies for an award ceremony because he believes, I don't know. I don't want to compare something as horrific as slavery in our country to something else, but he has a different perspective on something else and he decides to take a knee. I'm not going to accept it. There will be disciplinary action that would follow.
Can I just make a quick comment? Your words would be a lot easier to swallow if you had just stood up in the past and just said, hey, you know what? That thing that happened to Trayvon Martin, that was heinous. That thing that happened to Eric Brown or Philando Castile, that was heinous. But this, you stand up for. This, you burn a shirt for. This, you risk your political career for. But you've never stood up. You've never stood up for the black community like that. Never.
I would stand up in an instance. Now, Trayvon Martin was.
When Philando Castile got murdered, you didn't stand up for that. Nobody in Harford County, no white official stood up for that. You know it, and I know it. It would be a lot easier to swallow your conversation, your logic about defending the Constitution if our rights weren't abrogated every day, but you decided to pick this issue.
No, well, I understand your perspective there. I will say, here in Harford County, we've had 4 shootings since I've been sheriff. We've shot 4 people. All of them happen to be white males. I can tell you, before I was sheriff, one of the most horrific things, I guess, for the deputy involved was the shooting of the unarmed 18-year-old young man at the snowball stand in Forest Hill. Shootings happen. You can look at the data, and this is going to be a whole nother meeting. You can look at the data and the percent shooting. This is part of why I bought the judgmental shooting simulator. And anyone wants to come and see it and see what police officers are faced with. If you change the demographic in that shooting, we could have been the center point, not Ferguson, not some of these other places around the country. Any police use of force is horrific. Hopefully we can do anything to avoid it. I don't think I've weighed in on any line of duty deaths, yes, where police officers have lost their lives, but I don't think I've weighed in on any shooting of anyone. So I don't think it's a fair comparison.
But a violation of First Amendment speech, you weigh in.
You see it as a violation of First Amendment. I see it as agency policy, and I will defend his First Amendment all day long, which is what I said.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you all. Thank you for the questions. Not all are easy, but I do appreciate the opportunity.
And I hope that we'll have you back again. You'll come back again.
Be happy to.
Wonderful.